views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Let me be your lighthouse so I can show you the way. Let me be your shining light, I'll keep you from drifting away. I'm the one that makes you try when...
You know, we fought wars because of this Nazism, socialism, and all that. Well, it's happening in our countries now. What we fought in the war against.
You know, that's an interesting point because my grandfather served in the First World War, and my dad was joined the forces in the Second World War. And you're exactly right. That's what they were fighting for. And you see what's happening. And I could think back to my grandfather. I'm sure is just kind of shaking his head, sort of saying, like, this isn't what I fought for. This isn't what I wanted to have happen, and so on. And it's that's a bit of a motivation as well for myself. I'm kind of the keeper of the family history, and I go back and read through their records and their messages and that kind of thing, and I think, okay,
Repeating.
yeah, I gotta be there, you know, fighting in a different way than they did, but it's still the same kind of battle. It's a big one. It is certainly a major a major force that we're against here.
It's like Cain and Abel, right from there.
Yep. The parallels, you know, when you go back and you do your biblical study and so on, I read each day a passage or whatever, and I can't believe how many times I'll read something and I say, hey, bang, that's right on for today. It applies. You know, you can say, wow, Lord, you just spoke to me here about a particular incident or whatever, and it has meaning, and it gives you a direction that you should follow. Or I'll get on and I'll share it with my colleagues and sort of saying, hey, this is a good message. And we do share a lot of. We have a ethics pastor who weekly sends us some biblical passages and a message of inspiration and so on. And we always start our meetings with a reading and with some prayers and so on. And we usually try to tie those biblical passages to what we might be facing currently in Canada and in the world. So it does help to tie it. And I'm always amazed at how relevant the Bible still is today.
History repeats itself every generation. You gotta relearn.
Yeah.
So, what can we do to help our people in our countries? Well,
I think you mentioned earlier on about education, about teaching and training and so on. One of the initiatives that a number of groups here in Canada, and I think it's very much the same in the US with parental rights, is to get back into the schools and to push away some of these radical theories and so on. So there's a fairly concerted effort that some of our CHP members are getting involved in municipal and school board politics, and either linking up with like-minded parties on a provincial basis, or finding other trustee candidates that they can go forward in order to try and get into the school boards and try and push out some of these radical theories and so on.
Do you find that it's almost like a Marcus,
Marxist.
yeah, way of thinking?
It's without a doubt. I mean, it's. I had the opportunity to read this book by Edward Luther, When a Nation Forgets God, and
Mm,
he follows Germany in the 1930s and what happens there, and compares it to what's happening today, and the parallels are
similar.
they're almost it's like they've gone to there, looked at what they did, and sort of said, okay, let's just modernize it. The same kind of strategy. It was started years ago, which was to get into the universities, get into the teachers' colleges, put it into the heads of them so they could then take it to the students, and then you try and get it into the heads of the students, because parents have
And they don't tell parents they're doing that.
they don't tell parents, and also parents are not involved. For years, while my children were in school, I was involved in parent councils. I was a school board trustee at one time, and you had to have that kind of involvement in order to understand what was going on at the school. When you had your parent council meeting and you sat down with the principal and some of the staff, and you heard what your kids were telling you coming home to school, and you talked about things. Parents today kind of just sort of say, send the kids off to school, and that's it. They're not involved. They're not engaged. Some of it is societal because family structures have been broken down. So you've got a lot of single parent families.
This
So
happened back in the 60s and 50s. Started to go that way, dear.
yeah. When my kids were in school in the late 70s and 80s, we had a fair amount of involvement. We also had a fair number of people in church too. So, but since then, it's with the sexual revolution and with the whole idea of the me generation and so on, that it's all about me. It's not about God. It's not about anybody else. I do what I want. We've tended to have lost the influence of church, the lost of influence of parents, and they've just let it go. And they think, oh, well, if I send them to school, they'll get a good education, but they're not looking at what that education is, what other values are in. And I quite admire the parents in the U.S. that are opposing the critical race theory. And just 2 weeks ago here in Ontario, the legislature introduced a bill to put critical race theory into the Ontario schools. And
not a law country.
Yeah. And it's, again, it's another one of these things which now is popping up. US, Canada, Australia, other countries, and so on. And it's like, okay, this isn't just happening. This is being orchestrated. This is being, people are planning this and looking for the right opportunities to put these kind of policies into place. And it's a threat that we really have to get ourselves involved in. And so again, it just comes back to that trying to make people aware of what's going on. What you're doing with this show and what other people are doing with their shows is trying to
open up their eyes,
aware of what's going on. And but we can't make them listen, Patty. We can only just put it out there and encourage it and advertise it, promote it as much as we can. But there's just so many people that are closed. They've just closed their ears to what's going on. Prayer. That's what we always come back to is, we will pray. We will pray for them. We will. And I was just this morning reading something from the 40 Days for Life campaign, and they were talking about the numbers of babies that they had saved from abortion through the 40 Days for Life campaign that's going on now. And they said, well, people are saying, well, what makes it so powerful? How can it do this? And he said, prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Because the whole exercise is first and foremost to pray. And you're praying for these groups, you're praying for these mothers, praying for the babies and so on. and we've been very, very lucky to be able to have rescued from abortion so many of these babies, and it's the power of prayer. You're quite right.
I'm very gung ho about pro-life. My late aunt was an abortionist in Toronto back in the 60s and 70s.
Uh-huh.
I've been fighting it ever since. Peacefully, of course. But
Peacefully as possible, yes, for sure. I don't know how I guess I probably came across my involvement in pro-life from my mother-in-law, who was very involved in that. And when I married into the family, got exposed to some of the things that she was doing, and my wife would join her mom on protests or letter writing or whatever it happened to be, and so on. So I kind of got involved in that, and I've been very involved for decades now. And my wife and I have been on board of directors of organizations and so on, advocate for it. We speak on pro-life issues at church. We're known as the pro-life gurus at church. We've been at it for so long. So
good show.
anytime that pastor wants something done on pro-life, oh well, David and Linda will do that. But we try to organize. We have bulletin boards at church, a couple of them, and I keep material going up there, articles, newsletters, little posters, that kind of stuff, trying to educate.
People do read. They don't admit sometimes, but they do read. And they do acknowledge it.
Yeah. And I do see people, they'll stop by and they'll look at the material and so on. So, we think, okay, well, maybe we can reach a couple of people that way and so on. But it's kind of a one by one process. And
trying to get a domino effect, and kind of hard to push that first domino.
Yes, but that it's an interesting analogy, because there's two things that I've seen probably in the last 3 or 4 weeks that use the analogy of the domino. And one of them was a YouTube video where a fellow set up this 100-pound domino, and then smaller ones. And the last one he used a pair of tweezers to put it down. And he knocked that one over, and it knocked all of the dominoes to the last 100-pound one fell over.
It's amazing that it's Christ right there,
Exactly. So the same analogy's been used, as the fact that our individual prayers, our individual actions, they may start something, and that will lead to something else, and it will go on.
We can move mountains.
And it requires faith. It requires a belief in Jesus Christ that he can do it, and that he will do it. And it's his timetable, not necessarily ours. So we just have to realize that we shouldn't get discouraged and so on. But it is, there's a tremendous power, I think, available to us through the workings of the Holy Spirit, and our organized and concentrated praying for particular issues and so on.
People don't realize that God is not in a box. He's everywhere. And no one can stop him. He's the one that's pure and righteous.
Exactly.
Justice. Without him, we would not exist. We wouldn't even be here without him saying, let there be light.
Exactly. And it's unfortunate that so many people have sort of gotten away from religion. And one of the things that we talked about with what's happened in the last 2 years with COVID is that there was this huge fear of death. And we sort of said, well, what is motivating that? It's because people don't see anything after death. They think this is the end of it, that's it. And whereas those of us that are deep in our Christian faith and so on, saying, well, this is just a little side deal that we're doing here on earth, to get us into eternity. And eternity is a heck of a long time. It's a lot longer than the little bit of time we spend here on earth. So this is a trial or a test or some type of
Get us stronger.
yes. So,
Persevere. I was going to say, I love talking with you guys from CHP.
we like the opportunity to be able to spread our particular message, and we even though we're a political party, our first objective is to make people aware of the biblical principles that built your country and ours, and the fact that a lot of the rules, the institutions, the morals and the values and so on, they're Christian. That's the foundations. That's, you go back to the American Constitution and to the Canadian Constitution, and it's quite clear that the founders at that time were very much Christian based. That's what they see. Now, that's not to say that we're not open to many other religions and faiths and so on, but it's the fact it's those particular values and principles. So actually, one of the things that CHP is launching this month is a campaign called Restore Culture.
Oh.
And it is a campaign to oppose the cancel culture. So we have done up a brochure which tries to explain to Canadians the biblical basis of our Constitution and the founding of the country, because they're not aware. They are just not made aware of that, where the roots go and so on, and where that leads us. And we are attempting to distribute as a minimum of about 100,000 of those brochures through the mail, through door-to-door drops or whatever. So we just launched that, and one of the things we're doing here in Ottawa with our members and so on is rallying them to just take a handful, 100 brochures, and just walk around the neighborhood and drop them in the mailboxes and so on. And maybe one of those will resonate with somebody, and they'll sort of say, "Hey, I didn't know that. I didn't know why," and they'll look at that and start to think. It's one of the things that I've discussed with many people and so on. We seem to have lost our critical thinking skills. We are highly educated. We have highly educated people, but they don't seem to be thinking. They are just absorbing.
Like to imagine and to think on their own.
Yeah, and
the pandemic itself, not allowing people to go to church because the thinking is going to be spreading there. So how are they going to be encouraged to be more one with Christ if they don't go with their fellow members, congregation?
Exactly. That's one of the things, of course, what we felt as many. I mean, we were, shut out of church for quite some time. Some provinces and jurisdictions much longer, and they were very insistent on it. And matter of fact, if in one of the churches, or perhaps a couple of them, the pastors were not obeying the law as it was. They were following God's law in terms of, I need to preach to my people. And the police came in the middle of the service and disrupted the service, which actually is against the law, the criminal code in Canada.
This was in Alberta, right?
In Alberta, yes, it was.
I interviewed him.
Yes. So those kinds of instances, we saw the same thing happen in Europe. We saw it happen in Australia, right in the middle of a Roman Catholic Mass, to come in and check people and start issuing tickets because they didn't have masks on, or they weren't distant enough in the pews and so on. I mean, this is pure out and out religious persecution, and from the
There
state.
was violence in some areas too, when you didn't wear a mask
Yes, that's
on
right.
planes and everything. Well, listen, I would like to have an opportunity to thank you for coming on to my show. I Want You Back. We got a lot to talk about, kiddo.
Wow, we do. There's certainly no lack of issues that exist around, and no doubt I will be writing another communique on some topic, and that's
We'll see
related
you
to
then.
some of the
Yeah,
policies. What
I
we do.
just want to, what would you like to say to my audience, especially in Canada and of course, United States, where I am at, to encourage them?
Well, I guess I'd like to stand on the rooftops and say, wake up. You know, it's open your eyes, see what's going on, look for alternative means of getting yourself informed, like this show, like other podcasters and independent media and so on. It certainly came to the fore during the convoys, where the messages that people were hearing were just so far from reality. It was the independent broadcasters that were, putting out a message and so on. And I worked for a while in journalism, and I understand, everyone has a particular point of view and so on. But look at 4 or 5 different sources on the same particular topic, and then judge for yourself. Don't take the judgment of somebody else to sort of say, this is the way you should think. It's that take the information, get the facts and so on, and make up your own mind. But get yourself informed. We just do not have, we have too many people that are, come home, turn on the TV, and they just watch soap operas or shows or whatever it is, and so on. And yeah, it's just mindless, and it's unfortunate. And the content of those shows is undermining their particular values.
Garbage.
Yeah, and it's propaganda, so anyway, I think the message is probably to wake up, get yourself informed, and so on. I know it takes time, but
there is hope. I will not be silent.
yes, that's right. And I think when you get informed, and you'll find out that there are a lot of other people that feel your way. I think that's probably the biggest encouragement that has come out recently with these independent media channels and so on, is that people can watch a show like yours and sort of say, hey, there's somebody else, or there's another group out there that seems to think the same way that I do. I'm not alone. And this is this whole idea we're trying. The forces are trying to make us feel isolated, to feel that we're a minority, that your voice doesn't count or whatever. And I think what we've seen in some of your states, in the schools, where the parents have risen up and sort of said, no, we're not going to take this. You're supposed to be working for us, and they're taking back their children's education and so on. I think those are the kinds of things that we want to see, like that happened in Loudoun County and so on. So, but anyway, a wake up message.
Yes.
And pray. And keep praying.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for being on my show. David Darwin of the CHP, that's Christian Heritage Party of Canada. So I salute you.
Thank you, Patty.
What you do. Hey.
God bless to you.
God bless. We'll see you next week, and hopefully.
Okay.
See you.
Godspeed, my love, until we meet again. You're always in my heart and every dream. Don't let this time apart give in to all our fears. God will keep us close from up above. So until Godspeed, my love. God is with us always for the rest of all our lives.